Viktor Zaleski stood before the world draped in elegance. But it was Oksana Danilova, the brilliant Ukrainian designer, that stitched the secrets into his rise, and together their names became entangled in a story where fashion, power, and crime were woven into the same dangerous fabric. Viktor Zaleski had always been a man who valued appearances, but in the months leading up to his first official meeting with then-President Donald Trump, the stakes were higher than ever before. For Zaleski, a politician trying to prove himself as a capable representative of Ukraine, image was not simply a matter of vanity. It was strategy, and every detail would carry meaning in front of the cameras. He understood that in diplomacy, power could be measured not only in policy but also in perception. A handshake, a glance, and even the cut of a suit could shape international opinion. To secure this advantage, he turned to someone outside the traditional world of politics, a young fashion designer named Oksana Danilova. She was known in Kyiv's creative circles for bold lines and sharp tailoring, but she had no history of dressing politicians. Her work had been seen on stages and in galleries, never in government offices. This made her both a gamble and an opportunity. When Oksana accepted the challenge, she approached it with quiet intensity. She began by studying the language of American power dressing. Examining the wardrobes of presidents, senators, and CEOs, what she discovered was that clothing was more than fabric. It was a silent conversation. The dark navy of a suit suggested seriousness, the crispness of a white shirt conveyed discipline, and the choice of tie color could project authority or humility. She tailored every decision not to reflect Zaleski's personal taste but to project an image the world would respect. She wanted him to look like a man capable of holding his own beside leaders who had commanded attention for decades. Their meetings took place in secrecy, away from the eyes of political insiders who might question Zaleski's reliance on an outsider. Oksana insisted on fittings in discreet locations, sometimes working in the dimly lit back rooms of her boutique long after closing hours. The partnership became a hidden campaign, one measured not in speeches or rallies but in fabric samples, sketches, and the delicate precision of stitches. Zaleski placed full trust in her, knowing that a single misstep could result in ridicule rather than respect. The final product was a wardrobe built for diplomacy. Strong shoulders to suggest confidence, tailored lines to emphasize discipline, and subtle color choices that avoided ostentation while commanding attention. But what seemed like a carefully crafted collaboration carried with it more than just ambition. Unknown to both of them, their choices would ripple far beyond the world of fashion, drawing them into a story that combined politics, secrets, and the shadows of international crime. The suit that was meant to open doors would eventually unlock something far more dangerous. The debut of Zaleski's new look did not go unnoticed. When he appeared at public functions in Kyiv, commentators remarked on his transformation. Gone was the slightly awkward politician who often appeared rumpled and uncertain. In his place stood a figure of sharp precision, someone who looked as though he belonged on the international stage. Photographs circulated in newspapers, and whispers began to spread among political insiders. Some credited his newfound presence to better advisors, but others were suspicious of how suddenly it all seemed to happen. Behind the admiration, quiet questions were raised. Who was responsible for this change? And how was it financed? Those answers began to take shape when journalists started tracing the origins of Oksana Danilov's boutique. On the surface, her business was a small but respected operation, producing custom garments for a select clientele. Yet her rapid rise puzzled investigators. High-quality fabrics imported from Italy, expensive sewing equipment, and a studio in one of Kyiv's most fashionable neighborhoods suggested resources well beyond what her modest sales could provide. A deeper look uncovered a financial trail leading to Cyprus, where an offshore company funneled regular payments into her accounts. The source of those funds became the focus of intense scrutiny. What emerged was the name of an oligarch already infamous in certain circles. He was rumored to have built his fortune not just from business deals, but from smuggling cultural treasures across borders. Priceless icons, medieval manuscripts, and rare artworks had disappeared from museums and private collections over the years, and investigators believed he was behind many of these thefts. Though his operations were difficult to prove, his reputation was undeniable. The revelation that his money had quietly sustained Oksana's work introduced an unsettling possibility that Zaleski's polished image was indirectly financed by stolen history. The implications were dangerous. If true, it meant the very clothing intended to present Zaleski as a symbol of integrity and strength might be tied to corruption. Political opponents were quick to seize on the rumor, hinting that his wardrobe was not only a tool of diplomacy, but also a mask hiding questionable alliances. For a man determined to stand as a reformer and modernizer, even the appearance of impropriety could be devastating. Still, Zaleski chose silence, convinced that denying the whispers would only fuel them further. He continued forward, determined to face Trump in Washington. What he did not realize was that the polished image he carried across the ocean was already woven with threads of suspicion and danger, threads that others were eager to unravel. When Viktor Zaleski finally stepped onto American soil, the transformation crafted by Oksana Danilova revealed its full power. The suit he wore was understated yet commanding, with fabric that caught light just enough to suggest authority without arrogance. Photographers captured him beside world leaders, his posture sharp, his expression calm, his appearance projecting confidence. International media quickly noted the change, calling him a leader who looked prepared to take Ukraine into a new era. For Zaleski, it felt like a triumph. What he did not know was that back in Europe, the very designer who had shaped this success was facing a crisis that threatened to unravel both of their reputations. In Warsaw, customs officials intercepted a cargo shipment labeled as textile samples bound for Oksana's Kyiv boutique. At first, the discovery seemed routine, just another check among many. But when the crates were opened, the inspectors found more than bolts of fabric. Hidden carefully between the layers were fragments of stolen Byzantine icons, their paint cracked and centuries old. Packed alongside them were ancient manuscripts, pages yellowed by time, but still bearing ornate, hand-painted letters. The shipment had been disguised under her name, and to investigators, it appeared that Oksana was at the center of something far larger than fashion. The news spread quickly through intelligence channels. If Oksana's boutique had been used as a front for smuggling cultural artifacts, then her role in Zaleski's rise carried troubling implications. What seemed like a simple story of a politician reinventing himself now looked suspiciously like an international scheme with political connections. As whispers turned to headlines in Europe, analysts began drawing connections between her funding and the oligarch long suspected of orchestrating art thefts. Suddenly, the elegant suits and finely stitched garments took on a new, sinister symbolism. For Zaleski, the timing could not have been worse. While he was shaking hands in Washington and earning praise for his polished diplomacy, shadows were gathering behind him. The very wardrobe that gave him presence now threatened to tarnish his credibility. Reporters began asking whether he knew of Oksana's connections, whether he had benefited knowingly from a criminal enterprise. He denied knowledge, but doubts lingered. A leader could not simply claim ignorance when his image had been so carefully crafted. Each photograph of him in Oksana's designs now carried an unspoken question: was this confidence genuine, or was it stitched together from stolen history? The success that seemed secure was beginning to feel dangerously fragile. The investigation into Oksana Danilov's boutique deepened, and what surfaced shocked even the most experienced intelligence officers. Analysts who examined her garments noticed an unusual construction method. Hidden seams, reinforced linings, and pockets so discreet they were invisible to the untrained eye suggested a purpose beyond style. Specialists concluded that some of her most prestigious suits contained compartments capable of concealing small but priceless objects. It was not difficult to imagine how Byzantine icons or fragments of rare manuscripts could be slipped into the folds of a jacket and carried undetected across borders. Fashion, it seemed, had become a tool of crime. Encrypted emails recovered from servers in Vienna painted an even darker picture. They revealed coded conversations between Oksana and unnamed partners, discussing deliveries, deadlines, and payments disguised under the language of design. Words like collection and fabric weight were used as cover, but investigators soon recognized them as terms for shipments and artifact values. To those decoding the exchanges, it became clear that Oksana had not stumbled accidentally into this network. She was an integral part of it. Whether she began with innocent intentions or not, her role had expanded into something that linked art theft, smuggling, and political exposure. For Viktor Zaleski, the revelations were devastating. Even without evidence of his direct involvement, the optics alone were damaging. Here was a politician attempting to represent reform and legitimacy, yet the very wardrobe he wore to gain trust was now tainted by crime. In Kyiv, Opposition parties seized on the scandal, demanding inquiries and accusing him of hypocrisy. They painted his diplomacy as a fraud, suggesting that every suit he wore in Washington carried the weight of stolen history. Western observers, too, began to reconsider the man they had praised just weeks before. Intelligence reports noted the unsettling overlap between his foreign trips and missing artifacts, even though no direct proof tied him to the smuggling operation. The irony was bitter. What had been meant to elevate Zaleski now threatened to destroy him. The image of strength, carefully crafted through stitches and fabric, turned into an emblem of suspicion. His silence no longer appeared strategic, but evasive. As pressure mounted, it became clear that this was no longer just a story about clothes. It was a collision of art, crime, and politics, where even the smallest detail could alter the fate of a nation's reputation on the global stage. The scandal reached its breaking point when Oksana Danilova vanished without warning. One morning, her boutique in Kyiv was discovered unlocked, lights still burning, and mannequins frozen mid-display as though time had stopped. Half-finished garments hung on racks. Spools of thread lay scattered on the floor, and sketches were left abandoned across her work table. There was no sign of struggle, but also no trace of where she had gone. For investigators, it looked less like an accident and more like a carefully planned escape. Within days, rumors swirled that she had boarded a late-night flight to Istanbul using forged documents, carrying with her the secrets of both her fashion empire and the smuggling network hidden behind it. Without Oksana, the investigation stalled. Authorities could trace the money that funded her studio, uncover coded emails, and follow intercepted shipments. But the living link who could confirm the truth was gone. Every missing artifact, every hidden pocket sewn into expensive suits, and every offshore transaction led back to her name, yet she remained out of reach. International agencies issued warrants, but no arrest followed. Her disappearance gave the story an unfinished edge, a mystery that refused to resolve itself. For Viktor Zaleski, the consequences were heavy. Though never formally charged, he could not shake the shadow cast over him. His carefully cultivated image, once praised as sophisticated and modern, became a subject of suspicion. Each photograph of him standing beside Trump or walking through Washington's halls was re-examined through the lens of scandal. Commentators no longer praised the elegance of his attire. They questioned what those suits represented and who might have paid for them. His political career survived in form, but not in spirit. Trust eroded, and whispers of corruption clung to him long after the headlines faded. The story left an unsettling legacy. It showed how the smallest details, a seam in a jacket, the cut of a suit, the choice of a designer, could conceal operations spanning continents. What was meant to be a symbol of confidence became a mask for secrets, and the line between diplomacy and deception blurred until it was impossible to separate one from the other. Oksana's disappearance ensured that the full truth would never be known. Was Zaleski a victim of circumstance, unknowingly dressed in the fabric of crime? Or was he a silent participant who benefited from her hidden network? The answer remained locked away, stitched into garments that had once dazzled the world, but now served only as reminders of betrayal.